Paul, Joey, what's up, guys?
Hey.
What's up?
It's not all the time you get Navy SEALs on your podcast, so thanks so much for being on.
Ex-Navy SEALs, just throwing it out there.
Former.
There you go.
Joey, do you remember the first time we met?
At the Murph.
At the Murph event.
Yeah, and I drank like 3 beers right from you and then ran it.
I always knew Navy SEALs were built different, but then you show up for the Murph event, and to anyone who's not familiar with the Murph, it's a mile run, 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, 300 air squats, a mile run. And we were doing it for the SEAL Future Foundation to raise money, and you show up and you tell everyone that we're going to shotgun a beer prior to starting the Murph. That was our introduction, which I just, at that point, I'm like, oh my gosh,
Welcome.
These guys are just, they're different. They're different on every level.
Stop looking at me like that. I like how you didn't even blink an eye.
Keep things interesting.
You're just like, yeah, that sounds like you.
That makes sense.
That was a fun day, though.
It was.
And I'm so glad you came out, and that's kind of where we got to meet.
Yeah.
And then, Paul, last time I saw you, we were at the shooting event, the SEAL Future shooting event, which was incredible.
LA one.
Yeah.
No, that was a really good one. That was ran by Julian.
Yeah.
Julian Hall.
One of our dear friends.
Mm-hmm.
What's up, Julian? Paul, tell us about the SEAL Future Foundation.
Sure. So, SEAL Future Foundation, SFF. So the mission of the organization is to give a foundation that supports the well-being, education, and careers of Navy SEALs, so they can continue their life of service within their communities. So our big purpose is to help SEALs so they help others be of service. We have 4 programmatic pillars: health, career, education, and community. The big thing about us, we focus on individualized, tailored treatment plans and to meet the guys with where they're at, as opposed to be like, hey, here's a 12-step program, come on through it. We make sure that we understand where they're at. We approach it in a very holistic aspect throughout everything, right? What's your lifestyle? What's your home life? What's your health? What's everything? So we understand where you're at and what you're struggling with, or where you're thriving. And we have all different ways that I'm sure we'll get into of how we help the guys.
How long, Joey, have you been with the organization?
So I have actually kind of like full circled the organization in terms of when I got out of the teams. I used the SFF to actually, go to my next job, which was a small private equity shop in San Diego. And then I was asked to come back by one of the old founders of the organization, Paul Polkowski, to kind of revamp the health program because there just was such a, there's an epidemic of suicide across all SOF and all veterans. And being a medic in the teams and having that private equity background was kind of like like a merger in heaven. So I came in about, I think I'm actually, what's the date? Dude, I'm 3 years today.
Oh, there you go.
3 years today. That's amazing.
That's amazing.
And it's been a heck of a journey, let me tell you, from, a small nonprofit, and then PT came in. Well, you're always part of it, but like I think you came in like maybe a month or two, like officially after me.
Yeah, I was always, I think I've been involved for like 7 years now, but when I started getting involved, same thing. Like it was first because I needed help, and then I wanted to give back and started volunteering, and then I volunteered for a while, and then I officially came on staff, like kind of right around the same time.
Yeah.
So going back to it, so he, when PT came in, he raised a bunch of money in that first like a Nobu event, and you might not know this, but at the time I was building the medical program to be that to be the best it can be, right? To be absolutely insane. We can go over all that details and how that that has broader implications in the society as a whole. But ultimately, it was just that infusion of money that allowed me to supercharge our medical program, and it's absolutely insane in terms of like the outcomes, in terms of what we actually do for the guys, the stuff that we're helping to provide the means to treat with, and like I said, it's been wild. It has definitely evolved, and just want to say publicly now on a podcast, thank you. I do, because we wouldn't be able to do that, right? And so I've been here for 3 years, and we've been together, and PT took over the CEO job, and I took over the programs officer job pretty much the exact same time. So that was a year and a half ago.
About 2 years.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's ever since, and we're chugging along.
Mm-hmm.
So amazing. Can we talk about the Nobu event?
Yeah.
And
so
what that was like?
Yeah.
So for the audience that doesn't know, like,
right. Yeah. So and here's how it all, I'm a glutton for punishment, I guess you could say, but I like fundraising. I don't know. I really enjoy raising money, and obviously for a good cause. This was obviously something near and dear to me that I always wanted to be a part of and give back to. So incrementally, as much as the foundation may seem that like what they provided me was, such a small thing, but for me, it was huge. Right. And I just wanted to, more than 10X the return. So yeah, I asked the foundation once I kind of got on my feet, and I asked, the president, Paul Polkowski at the time, I was like, hey, what do you guys need? And he was like, well, you're moving to LA. Can you help build a network there? And so that guys have a landing pad for whoever moves there. You can run the chapter there and help guys get plugged into the local industries. I'm like, absolutely. So I started making connections. I think I made a lot of different connections. It's interesting, just coming out of the teams, you really, all is like your platoon, your sister platoon, and the troop that you're in at your team. And that's all you need to know when you're active duty. So when you get out and you're like, you hear this thing about a network and, your network is your net worth kind of thing. And you're like, what does all this mean? And so I started to get introduced to people. And as a, just separated active duty guy into a former guy, you're very skeptical on everybody. You're kind of looking at everybody like, what's their intention here? What do they want in life? What do they want from me? Because in the SEAL teams, everybody, what they look like, what they smell like, what they, how they move at night. It's a little different. So to make friends is hard sometimes, I guess you could say. So met a bunch of different networks that I didn't really connect with. And then it wasn't until I met through Mike Keating, who you may know, introduced me to Micah Rohr. And then Micah, I met him, and it was funny when I first met him. I was, Mike Keating introduced me, and I was like, oh, hey, what's up, man? And he was like, hey, how are you? Well, I'm doing well. I was like, Mike was like, you guys need to, hang out. And I'm like, cool, what do you like to do? You want to go surfing? You want to go lift weights? And he was like, nope. He's like, I don't do any of that.
This is Micah?
Micah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and, I see, Micah, and he's just like, he's very dry humor type of guy. And he's like,
Micah,
nope.
no.
Yeah. So I was like, sounds good, man. I don't know what we're going to do, but I guess we'll just hang out and grab a coffee. But fast forward, he got involved. We targeted like a LA shooting event. And we first started there with the LA shooting event, shooting experience, and brought everybody out. And it wasn't until after that event, we went to Tyler's place, the brats and
Wishkuka.
Yeah, Wishkuka.
Yeah, which is where we met and
Yep.
shot
I know.
in the beer.
And we just
right in Venice.
we just drove by that.
Yeah, we just drove by it. And we went there, and it wasn't until after everything kind of calmed down. We're at Tyler's place, and we're with Micah, Sten, Ben, all the guys, and one of the guys, I think it was Sten, like stood up, and I think Brady was there, Bollinger, and he was like, hey, Brady, and he said some very meaningful things to him, and he was like, just in front of everybody, like, hey, just want to recognize, whether he was going through a tough time or whatever, and like he's on the other side of it. He just called it out, and he recognized him and cheers to him, kind of thing. I was like, shit, these people actually really show up for each other. And I saw that community aspect, and I was like, this is who I want to build a community with. And so took that, and I started throwing ideas at these guys, and I was like, hey man, I want to make a big impact for this foundation because it's really helped me. What do you guys think? I had this idea. I was like, hey, I can get access to, I think it was like the US Bank building downtown. And, there's a thing that we can do there. We could do a big event, blah, blah, blah. And everyone's like, that's a shit idea. You should not do it there. You should do it in Newport. And that's when the idea of Nobu came up. And first year at Nobu, and this kind of seems to be the tempo for what we try to do. We're like, okay, let's do this Newport event. Let's do it at Nobu right there in Lido Village. And what we aim to do is do a big helo demo and like bring in, just a demonstration, because it's that storytelling aspect, get people immersed in the storytelling. Because I want them to feel it, to understand what it is that they're getting involved with. unfortunately, we couldn't pull off the helo that year, but we had a great event. We raised over $800,000 on our first event.
Yeah, you did.
Which went really well.
And it went fast.
Yeah, that money, yeah, it was great. And it was kind of interesting at the time because, you got to spend money to make money. And our budget was like, hey, you guys, here's your budget. And it was like not enough to pay for, the drinks at the tables. And we're like, my big thing was like, hey, listen, you guys don't have to worry about anything. Just show up. Like me talking to the foundation, like, we got it.
Taking a step back, isn't it cool to think about how you're one relationship away from your life changing?
Yeah.
I think about what you said, like, I think it was like, your net worth is your network, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think about that all the time of like, you meet someone and they just change your life. Sometimes for the worse and sometimes for the better.
Yeah.
But here you met this incredible group of guys that I feel very fortunate and grateful to know. And now all of a sudden, like, they kind of changed the trajectory of what you were doing with the Seal Future Foundation. So going back to Nobu, which first event, you guys raised $800,000.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Second event, which is, I believe, the event I went to.
Right.
Was the second event. You guys raised $1 million at that event.
Yep.
And you guys had choppers coming in. I think you dropped out of a chopper onto a yacht. It was a scene. It was incredible.
Yeah.
It sure was.
Yeah, that was, don't look at me that way.
No, tell us about how incredible it was.
Well, there's a lot of things that people don't understand that was happening that it looked cool, but there was kind of some pucker moments.
It looked great, dude.
There were some what moments?
Some pucker moments.
Oh.
So,
pucker moment is like a little scared, like this could go wrong.
Yeah, this is probably not going according to plan.
Me and the other medic were in the back, like, are we going to have to dive in that water, dude?
Oh, no way. Well, you guys pulled it off. Like, no one thought anything of it.
It looked great.
It looked great.
It looked flawless from my view.
It's all that matters, by the way.
Yeah.
By design.
Great photo op.
Great, dude. It's on TMZ and stuff, dude.
Yeah, it was on TMZ. Yeah.
So that's kind of
okay. Let's just take a step back. Like, explain, like, because the audience is gonna be like, "What are they talking about?"
Yeah.
So you threw the second event at Nobu down in Orange County, right? And then you guys did this like grand entrance, and you take it from there.
So again, first you don't succeed, try again, right? So the first year we couldn't pull off a helo. So second year we're like, okay, let's figure out how we can do this. So we got some key players involved. So Fred North, who's part of the film industry, is the top helo pilot in the movie industry. This is one of those things that separates like what active duty life is like compared to outside of active duty. Like active duty, when you do anything with helos or whatever, especially for training, there's so many different approval processes, safety checks, all these things, right? Well, in civilian life, you can be like, okay, well, we got the bird, let's just jump in and go do some cool stuff. And that's kind of how it happened. So with this one, got the approval. It was basically like show up at this time, at this airport, at this hangar. And my thought process was, hey, can we at least do a dirt dive? Can we practice this for one? And the answer was, no, we can't practice it. We just got to do it live. I'm like, okay. And we just jumped on the bird as me and 3 other team guys. Mm-hmm. And then, the plan was to leave one guy in the bird. 3 of us are going to rappel off. Once we got there, we'll rappel onto this yacht, take down the yacht as like a demonstration. And then we'll motor in and put the flag up for the event. So everything was going according to plan. And we got the bird in the air. Timing was great. And we just buzzed the tower.
Epic.
Yeah, we buzzed the tower.
It was epic, man. It was really well done.
Yeah.
That part.
And so we came, right over the crowd, right into the harbor there and started circling the yacht, which the pilot was awesome. Like he just went nose down, like circling the yacht and did a good helo demonstration. And then we went ahead and positioned ourselves to do the rappel. Now, mind you, like I'm actually wearing like plates and everything, like actually, instead of like any flotation, I didn't have any, which is kind of a big no-no, in our groups, because it's like, if you go in the water, like you're going to have to ditch your plates to get to the top. It's going to be,
because how much like your,
it wasn't that. I mean, I had a rifle on me and I had plates, which are like 25 pounds, just enough to like be annoying to try to get off underwater. And, so we go ahead and rappel. First 2 guys land. Well, the pilot didn't know the third guy, which was me, was going to come off. or he thought I was already off, and he wasn't, heads up with the other guy that was staying on that was acting as a crew chief. Well, he started lifting off when I was coming down the rope. So I have this great photo of like the bird, like probably like 80, maybe 100 feet above the yacht. And then you see the rappel line is 30 feet from the yacht. And then I'm just hanging there like 10 feet down the rappel line.
Oh my gosh.
Just kind of holding on. And before he notices that I'm on the line. So his plan was to continue to do a few maneuvers, which would have just completely thrown me quite a bit. And then if you look at the photo, I always point this out, all the way at the bottom, there's a knot in the line. So I wouldn't even be able to like ditch all the way through. So
wow.
that could have turned like pretty interesting. Joey's looking at me funny.
Again, we were prepared to dive in the water.
Yeah.
Swim out.
So all of that was like,
because you were with the crowd.
I was the crowd in the suit with my wife and everything.
And you were watching it,
and
you
me and
picked
my other staff member were like, "Oh man, if this goes bad, like
that's why you dirt dive."
This is why you dirt, especially a non-combative performance, pretty much. Like absolutely right. This is why you dirt dive. But like everything he was saying, it's just like, man, anything in a second could go really wrong. And obviously, like we're gonna go and swim out there and try to get PT if you can, kind of deal. So.
And a dirt dive is, for people that
it's a
don't know,
practice.
it's just a
practice
practice run.
Yeah.
So you go through everything, you check everything.
Yeah, just because it's a performance. It's not real life. It's not, there's someone shooting at you, so it would have been really nice to just do that and then everyone kind of know what's the kind of play of the show. I'm not an actor or anything like that, right? But just understand that kind of deal. And the communication was a little off, as you can see with some stuff, but ultimately.
It worked out.
Yeah, we pulled it off, and it was one of our first demos that we didn't really know the magnitude of like what that effect could be, like from an maybe a social, like an awareness, like a news channel awareness kind of point. Which
Joey mentioned it. TMZ picked it up.
Yeah, TMZ picked it up
media
right away.
Did that help like the awareness of the organization from like more people wanting to get involved?
Not really. So this is kind of the feedback, right? So, and it showed us like the power of what we can do with demos, right? And then, TMZ picked up. So next day was a little chaotic because it was on Good Morning America the next day, and it kind of hit all the major news channels. And so I had to like start submitting like statements of like, hey, this is what it was, this is what it wasn't, and Warcom reached out, which is like the command that was like, hey, what the hell is going on with Navy SEALs in the Newport Harbor? So they asked, they're like, hey, are any active duty guys there? Are there any, I started getting texts from some of the command leaderships that were like, hey, dude, like we're about to get pulled into a meeting because of what you guys did. We're like, okay, well, it was done with all Hollywood guys. It's like, we had stunt guys, special effects guys. We had the helo pilots. We had everything approved with the FAA, the harbor master. Everything was good. It's, we did a demo and it all ended up being worked out, but it was definitely one of those things where, it hit everybody's radar, good, bad, and ugly kind of thing. So, but all in all, it did bring some awareness. One of the things that is always, there's a few different SEAL nonprofits out there. And the first headline that came out on TMZ was like, oh, the Navy SEAL Foundation did a demonstration for their event. And so Micah called TMZ and was like, hey, it's not the Navy SEAL Foundation, it's the SEAL Future Foundation. But it's easy to get confused, right? And but that was kind of one of the things that we had to like correct them on, because we do want the awareness out there. And it was all positive feedback. Like it's still on social media now. Like it's gotten so many like millions of views on the helo side. If you look at all the comments, it was like very positive. Like all the people were like, oh, that's super awesome that Navy SEALs were doing this. Like there's a lot of positive reactions to it. So we're happy to see that.
Well, that kind of brings up my next question is what made you want to join SEAL Future Foundation versus some of the other charities that are out there that are focused on Navy SEALs?
Yeah. I mean, they were the only ones that were willing to help with where I was at. And, at the time when I was joining, there's only like I don't even know if you were on staff when I first got involved. It was Paul, Amory. Like it was only 3 people.
Yeah. When you were just like volunteers.
When I was volunteering.
Oh yeah. I wasn't there, man. I was out doing my thing.
Yeah. It was a very small organization, but like small organization, big heart, big willingness to get, hands on. And they were very real with me of where they were at. They're like, hey, we'll try to help as much as we can. And I think that's something that Joey, you and I and AP have always talked about. It's like we want to keep that heartbeat of the organization where it's like if a guy reaches out to us and it may not be in our mission, we're not going to turn him away. We're going to be like, hey man, like we'll help you. It just might not come directly from us, but we'll help you find an answer. And, we never let a guy like just basically get a no. And I think that's something that's continued, that we make sure it continues, no matter how big we get or whatever it is. So that was my first impression with the organization. Like the people that were involved, even though it was a very small group, they had that mentality. Like, hey, we're going to help you. We're super small. We may not have the means to, but we'll connect you with the right people. And that was great. And I was getting some health support on the endocrine side for a bit. And as sometimes it happens, like fundraising wasn't working out for the organization. I got the call from them being like, hey, we just can't keep it going for you because you're not high risk, right? I was the first one to be like, dude, take me off of it, send it to another guy that needs it more than I do. And so it is that there's a very direct relationship with like the people who are getting the services and us. Like we're as transparent as we can be. Like, hey, we're trying to support as much as possible, and we'll go all the way to where we barely have money in the bank to make it happen. Yeah. So that's kind of the heartbeat of the organization. That's why I wanted to be a part of it.
Joey, running programs like I'm a Navy SEAL, or someone is a Navy SEAL that just comes out of active duty, and they're like, hey, I could use some help, and they look to the organization, like how, like walk me through from like that moment where someone reaches out to.
So I think what makes us really different is we try to guide people to not stamp on landmines, if we want to use military lingo, right? So I've made mistakes coming out of the teams. My friends have made mistakes out of teams, and we try to get people like around the 2-year mark before they decide that they want to punch out, right, or leave the teams. It gives them enough time to engage into our career side of the house to really develop that network, develop who they really want to be, right, through the use of like ICF coaching, or you're just like talking to PT or myself or Jared, or Jared's my main career and education guy, and really having these heartfelt conversations of like, hey man, do you really want to work Wall Street, bro? Like, I know you watch Wolf of Wall Street, dude, but it's not really like that kind of deal, right? It might be even better than that kind of deal. No, I'm just kidding. But the point is like having that conversation, and we talk about like what makes us really unique and different. Honestly, if you like look at our, and I'll talk through our programs in a second, but like what makes us really unique and different in our programming is that when I talk to people about all the intrinsic stuff that we do in terms of just like all the deep dive of why we do it and the big vision further, and PT and I talk about this all the time. The truth is, it's just like, I make programs for myself because I was a team guy and I don't want the next guy to suffer. And it's always you're like motto, like I want to give back to the people, kind of deal and stuff. So it's like we make programs for us and because we have the same problems that everybody else, or we've experienced the same problems. And so we don't want people to step on those landmines. So what makes us really unique is no matter if you go through career, you go through education, or in our medical program, which is pretty well known now, is that, you're going to talk to me, or Jared, or David, or Hoagie, or PT, or Anthony, or whoever is involved to be like, hey man, I know how you're feeling. And so we try to start that process at that 2-year mark, because like, we talked about it this year, in terms of like our coaching program, because we really like to see what people's passions are, right? We want people to be passionate, because the truth is like, I hope that anybody ever listens to this podcast on the SEAL side, is that it's going to be really hard to find something that's like so passionate about, like you were in the teams. Like it's, the analogy I always use is like if you were a world-class skier and we've talked about that, right? Right? Is that, you're a world-class skier, and then in one day I go, you know what? You probably skate your entire life, kind of doing all these amazing mountains across the world. And I say, in one day I go, you're at Heavenly, this is not an advertisement for you, but you're at Heavenly at Tahoe or whatever, and you can only do the bunny hill. For the rest of your life, you can only do the bunny hill. Now, you can look at it and be like, my life sucks. Or you can be like, well, the bunny hill's pretty cool. I can learn tricks. I can learn how to do super cool stuff on the bunny hill, right? But that's kind of how it's like for every Navy SEAL, no matter where you are in your career. It's never going to be like that again for the majority of people kind of deal. And so we have to figure out, what is your passion besides being a Navy SEAL? And so we like to get guys 2 years out. The reason why it's so, I guess you could say, elongated in terms of that 2 year mark is we like to really see if a guy's like, I don't think I'm passionate besides being a Navy SEAL. Then that's a win. Because I'm going to tell you right now, and we'll talk about it in a little bit, but like when guys call us in the middle of the night, sometimes the answer is not medical. It's just like passion and purpose. And they've lost it all, and they should have stayed in the teams. It's the truth. They should have stayed in the teams. They should have kept doing what they should have been doing. But for whatever reason, they never came through us, and they just decided to punch out of the teams. And so it's really important that that we talk to our guys, and so that we start with that. What's your purpose and passion in life? We work it. We obviously a lot of our events are kind of cool because even though we do helicopter stuff,
Joey loves helicopter stuff.
Oh my God. Even though we do helicopter stuff and all these cool events and we bring like cool people into our fold, it's really a networking thing for our guys, right? It's to find the people that are not so scary, dude, in terms of, and I use that as a pretty weak term, but like people do care about you, man. They want to see you succeed. It's
Absolutely.
not like this dog-eat-dog world kind of deal. We want to bring those people together with the team guys to say, hey, it's okay kind of deal. Because you're looking at high performers in the outside. Yeah, they're not going to be high performers Navy SEALs, but they're high performing in what they do. What are some similarities that we can connect between you two and then go out and do great things?
Yeah.
Kind of deal. So that's our 2 year mark in terms of like.
By the way, I absolutely love that. I mean, for me, it's like whenever I, like being not in active duty, not serving, but whenever I come across a Navy SEAL or anyone that served, it's like I'm so appreciative for what they've done for me and for the country.
Thank you.
So it's just like, and I know I am the norm. Like I really do believe that most citizens are that way. And so you said something about like it kind of being kind of scary for a Navy SEAL, but it's like you guys created this environment where it's like high performers on the business side, but also high performers when it comes to being a Navy SEAL. Cause like you are like the apex of the military, and it's like bringing these two together because there's mutual respect.
Yep.
And there is a ton of synergies
There
between
is.
the two.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing there, because it's something that you don't hear a lot of times, is like scare Navy SEAL in the same sentence, which is an interesting thing to hear. It is that trust aspect, really. It comes down to like, can I trust the people that I'm working for, with, and partnering with to, have my back as much as I have theirs. And I think that's where guys get a little fearful when they're like, I go all in on things that I love and I care about. It becomes a lifestyle. Like if I get involved with this group, I'm going to go all in. And it's very hard to trust that your team that you're with is doing the same thing. So there's a bit of education on both sides of, how SEALs come into things, but also educating SEALs of like, okay, the team lifestyle, that craft lifestyle that you're so used to being embedded in, the way to do your work as an active duty Navy SEAL isn't necessarily the right way to approach your civilian side, because it could lead to burnout. It could lead to burning your team out, your family out, your health out, because you don't have that environment that's structured around that type of lifestyle. Because our whole active duty side is built for that, to be able to lean in that capacity where you wake up super early, you go to the team, you work out, you check in with your team, you do whatever you have to do that day, and then you're prepping your gear like all night. And then sometimes you'll crash in the high bay and wake up the next morning and just rinse and repeat until, whatever it is that you're doing that you're trying to plan for or about to go into. And same thing when you go on deployment, it's just a complete lifestyle of 24/7. So I think that's one of the key elements when we talk about like what would make a Navy SEAL fearful of something. It's that trust element of like, hey, can I trust this team that I'm supposed to be a part of in the civilian life? Like I don't know who they are.
No, it's good. But yeah, so PT's absolutely right. But that's where really kind of, in the career and education department, really in the end, I could talk through stats kind of deal because, we sit here, we kind of like, we talk about all these cool stories, but the truth is our impact, we claim to be a small nonprofit, and we technically kind of are, but not really. Like our impact is really big. I mean, we do thousands of guys a year.
Wow.
across the different programs we do.
That's amazing.
And we have such a small team. But really it comes down to is, and it's something that I'm really proud of, and it's something that our predecessors have always done, that really the reason why I'm really involved is because like this isn't like a program. Like you don't come and just do a program and then graduate, and then move on. It's like you go through a stuff, it's bespoke, we tailor stuff, whether it be medical, career, or education kind of deal, and then we check in and we constantly talk through things, and we're here all the time. Doesn't matter if it's medical, doesn't matter career. Like we talk this. I mean, I talk to anyone from admirals to down about like career choices. Like, hey, how do I navigate to the next step? Hey, sir, I don't know, kind of deal, right? But I have a ton of people that will help you navigate that. Or I do know. I've actually been part of this, right? And so this constant like touch point to thing. We always say we're the SEAL team outside the SEAL teams. Your next SEAL team kind of deal, and it's the truth. We're your next SEAL team, and so we want to always and that includes also guys like yourself, right? Like, I don't know all the answers. The world's too big, kind of deal. PT doesn't have all the answers. You might not have all the answers, but our collective mind across the nation of our network, we have the answer you seek. Someone's going to know the answer that someone's needing at that time. So it's a really cool, like, symbiotic kind of like ecosystem across everything. But that's kind of like really our career and education side. And I can walk through statistics if you want.
Stats would be interesting.
Yeah.
Also, I think you said something else I found really interesting is you said you guys have a world-class medical system.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and we'll get to that. That could be another 5-hour thing. I could lecture that.
Yeah. And I think, just kind of highlighting like the reason why our network's so strong and the ecosystem, we have 35 chapters across the nation. We call them FOBs. And the reason our network's so strong is because of the lack of funding that we had in the early days, which was causing us to like, okay, how do we create impact when we don't have any revenue? And it was very much through like, okay, well, we can make warm handshakes. We can introduce people to mentorship and all that. And that's all free. It just takes bandwidth. And, we've completely evolved from that where, there was a choke point, and now we have an app that basically is this vetted ecosystem where everybody's on, all the resources are there. You can connect at will. And, the power that you see in that app that was built is a guy sends out a question, it gets answered within 10 minutes. Because there's so many people tuned into it, and there's different channels in it where it's like different industry focuses.
So this is one resource that you guys offer to
one resource that we've been able to innovate because of a necessity. Again, like we were a choke point. So
would you, if someone's active duty, can they be a part of this?
Yep. So we have guys on the active duty side that can plug in a few different elements. Some of the program they can't participate in until they're out, especially the health stuff. Like we work really well with the active duty commands in the sense of there's a line you don't cross and some lines you can work together on, because when you're active duty, you are the property of the military. And we could talk about that, but we've definitely helped out a few different ways on active duty side when they needed it.
What about stats? You were mentioning stats, and love to talk about the medical stuff.
We have a couple of unique programs just to touch on career real quick and education on some stats. So there's about 250 guys to get out of the teams a year. There's active duty. They're looking to transition out. We capture about 180 of them. Wow. Brand new people. Now, again, we are a full service organization, so it doesn't just stop again, not programmatic, right? It's not just the guys getting out. It's the guys also who are like, right now our economy is a little down and stuff. So like, people are, getting laid off. They're going to come back to us, and we're going to use our network to either that's go to school or get to the next career kind of deal. But we do about...
Joey, you're saying 180 join the organization?
Well, more than that joined. I think, what is it, like 400 people on average join the organization a year in SEALs?
Yeah,
alone.
Because there's SEALs that have been out for a long time.
Yeah,
that are just getting introduced to the organization. Yeah. So there's hand in hand, like spreading the word on the guys that have already been out, and then also on the active duty side, the active duty commands knowing what resources we provide for the guys. So that's kind of where it comes from.
So we again, this is just for career stuff, right? We do about 180 guys a year for job placement. We do measure success on job placement. This is unique to us in the SFF. A lot of organizations, when I did a lot of research, is they do not actually measure success in job placement. Majority of the time, it's just usually a program, and then kind of like, hey, if it happens, it happens. Where I find that a failure. And we are working through stuff right now with some new initiatives to really help have our network kind of. Oh, Jesus!
Don't worry about that. You'll pay for that later.
I love that song, dude. It's so good, dude. It's so good to play too.
It's a great ringtone.
It's so good to play on my PRS. Oh my gosh. Sorry. I'm a little nerd here, a little guitar nerd. So anyways, the point is that we have a new initiative kind of solving kind of for all veteran mentorship problems, because there's a lot of great organizations out there, a lot of great programs out there, and I'm not talking just for Navy SEALs, but really where it kind of always falls flat. You look at the big programs out there, like the Goldman Sachs Veteran Program and all this stuff. Like there's this idea of mentorship is I don't think is. There's no one's ever defined truly mentorship. And so what we're doing is we're redefining mentorship and what that looks like. And it's always to help, get a guy to their next career kind of deal. So, stay tuned for some new additions in our career side, but we are pretty good. Like last year, I think we helped 180 guys on the career side alone. And I think we did, 97 job placements. I'm pretty sure it was like 97 job placements on the top of my head.
And there's a asterisk on that, right?
There is an asterisk. So the funny thing is, this is true. This is why PT's here. There is an asterisk, right? Because of the damn app. And I say it like that because it's the greatest creation that we've had so far. But there are a lot of guys I reach out and I'm like, hey man, what's going on? They're like, yeah, man, I was out of a job. I'm like, man, why didn't you come to us? And he goes, oh no, I found another job. I just literally messaged a guy in an app and I'm employed now. It's like, oh. Well, that's a check in the box. Like, I'll take that credit, baby. So, like, we don't honestly know how many connections are happening because the app is just so.
Yeah. And that's just the app aspect. We have all the chapters too that are continuously helping the guys locally. Yeah. So we have some plans in order to really understand that impact and capture it so that we can articulate like what that looks like.
Yeah. So on the career side, helping place people in jobs, you guys are actually doing very good job of that.
It's a lot of work.
And then
on the education, so it's pretty simple. We have two very distinct things for education. One is like having this conversation where do you really need to get educated, right? Most enlisted SEALs have degrees, like bachelor's degrees. Officers have usually, both actually enlisted and officers have master's degrees at one point in their career. And so a lot of guys want to go the MBA route and stuff. And so, we really talk through like, what does that mean to you? Really, do you need an MBA based on what you want to do? If it is so, then we will set them up for success and we will coach them. And we have 100% placement in first and second school of choices. When I first started, I used to say, well, we got to measure the first school of choice. But then I looked at that statistic and it was only like 50%. And I'm like, well, what are the schools people are applying to? It's like, oh yeah, well, I got into Harvard and Yale. And I chose Yale instead. It's like, oh, come on, dude, kind of deal. So first and second, we're 100% success rate in first and second school of choice kind of deal. And that goes to med school as well and law school. And if they want to do that. And we're really excited for that stat. We have a really great coaching program that helps really develop these and help to write resumes and admissions essays, obviously. And then we provide the means to, for guys to actually study for these tests and stuff like that, and then interview prep and all that jazz if they want to go that route. The second cool thing is our scholarships. We changed it this year, our scholarships, to really meet the needs of the community. So a lot of scholarships are traditionally based where it's like 2 times a year based on the semester. What we were seeing is a lot of guys were like, well, I'm doing a summer school class, or my school starts in January, or not January, but like in a weird time because there's these like weird like month long, or like, hey, I have a certification, I want to go get my pilot's license or something. So we designed our scholarships to kind of encompass anything that kind of makes sense that we can cover, and as long with certifications as well as like small business stuff. So like, for example, if a guy wants to be an entrepreneur and wants to start a website, and we're like, hey man, apply for a scholarship and we'll help build your website kind of deal, right? It's a low lift, but it's really just driven dividends so far. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to name some of the businesses out there that have actually used this so far, but I'll sure as hell in a couple of years, dude, when they take off kind of deal, right? But it's good, right? It's under the guise of scholarship. It's not a grant, right? It's a very specific thing. And, a lot of great stuff has happened for that. And then, that's on the education side. Then it comes to health, the big one, 68% of our spend. Yeah. 68% of our spend is health. And so health is super duper. That's an educated thing to say. Super duper. It's the most unique thing I've ever created in my life. And I have a great team, obviously PT, helping build that. And with our great medical board of advisors, it's full of, there's 12 MDs and PhDs and one nurse practitioner and 2 nurse practitioners and nurse practitioners and 1 PA. And it started with, like the SFF always had kind of a health program, and it was just looking at hormones. Because there is a correlation between blast injuries and low testosterone, high cortisol. et cetera, right? But the problem is that's one problem. And the SFS, and there's a couple organizations that do the same kind of thing. And so we really wanted to like, well, how do we really help the community with problems that nobody's solving and access to care that like nobody will touch kind of deal, right? And so before I came here, SFF was a very big proponent of the psychedelic realm. And, you know, they're kind of one of the first people to actually engage in that in a safe manner. I can't take credit for that because that's what we were doing. I will say that the program has absolutely changed and for the better in terms of safeguards for that stuff. But, you know, SFF has really like kind of supercharged the TBI space because what we're seeing now and with my own knowledge is a lot of people are classified as PTSD, but they don't really have PTSD. They have TBI. And
Can you talk about the difference?
Yeah. So PTSD is post-traumatic. It's not a disorder anymore. It's just post-traumatic stress. You know, that's flashbacks and stuff like that. And just having, you know, certain things, we're laughing at this, certain things tick things off.
Heat.
Stop,
Tight
dude.
spaces.
Stop, dude. Kind of deal. And, you know, where TBI is everything with PTSD, like memory loss and like, you know, mood swings. I mean, you can go down the damn list, right? There's just a ton of stuff associated with TBI, especially physiological things like low testosterone and all this jazz. And really it was like, do you have PTSD or do you have TBI? I'm not a doctor, right? I was just a medic in the teens, but I'm not a doctor, but I'm saying you need to talk to an actual clinician that knows the difference and how to diagnose the differences, right? And this is not VA stuff, okay? We're not talking the VA kind of deal because they're their own thing kind of deal, right? Like,
and they won't touch some of this stuff.
It's not that they won't touch it. Is that one thing that I've realized in traditional medicine is it's really hard to have progress for anyone because of super like laws. Like things need to have experiments done with them with IRBs, and you have to have controls and stuff like that. And the problem is that, you know, if you look how the way that people are treating TBIs nowadays, because I think the VA does actually classify as TBIs now, traumatic brain injuries, right? Well, what are they doing to actually promote that healing, right? Well, it's the same thing as they use as PTSD. It's SSRI usage. It's like vestibular therapies. It's all these things that like, that's fine, man. But again, who is coming up with these protocols kind of deal, right? Are these actual operators who actually, and doctors who have actually gone through deployments, have actually been blown up? The answer is absolutely not kind of deal. It's not. It's just these regular people who just do these studies and they don't really know. And it makes sense though, if you think about it. I mean, what is the population of special forces in the military? It's like 0.001% of the actual military. Talking about the cross the thing, it might be a little bit more than that, but the point is like there's just not a lot. And you look at special operators and just across the board, the heavy deployment cycles, the heavy training cycles of just getting blasted, the chronic TBIs, not just the huge acute TBIs you see in the, you know, the movies and stuff where they get blown up in slow-mo and all that crap. Kind of, it's just the constant repetition. It does damage to your body. And it's like, what is the VA? What are people doing for this? And you look at the other organizations out there, you know, they're trying their best, but they're really not, they don't want to take the actual means to do what needs to be done. And so what does that look like? So the first and foremost on the medical side is I wanted to use the SEAL medic kind of as the first step. It's kind of how our culture is, you know, like PT would come to me in the platoon space, be like, hey man, my foot hurts, dude. And I would take a look at it, be like, hey man, this is, you know, what's up? This is what we're going to do. If it needs to go escalate to higher care, we can do it. Good triages, right? If I need to do something with it kind of deal, I will. I'll prescribe something, et cetera, et cetera. This is in the SEAL teams. I can't do any of this stuff nowadays. And that's kind of how we wanted to keep it. It's like a SEAL would call us. We'd talk through everything. Because here's the thing. If some SEAL comes up and talks to a physician, we see it all the time, they're going to omit a lot of things. Like they're not going to tell them a lot of things, which are key parts of like really deep and dive of what do you need to be treated, right? Where if the SEAL med, they're gonna be like, hey, I did X, Y, and Z, and you're like, yeah, me too. Cool, let's do that.
Why do you think they omit a lot of things?
Well, I mean, it's just because it's the VA, man. No one, you know, it's like hard to trust the government and stuff like that. And I can tell you specifically some stories that like they'll blow your mind. I'm not actually gonna tell them on this damn podcast, but you know, it's just like there is reasons why people omit that stuff, and they just don't want people to know. And quite frankly, people are going to get judged. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to not judge people nowadays. And
that's, you know, as Joey's mentioned, like that's why the team guide dialogue is so important, so crucial for us. Because if you call us, it's another guy that's like you, knows your problems, has been through it, seen it 100 times. And every guy that comes in is like, they just don't know. So they think what they're dealing with is not normal. And the first thing we tell them is like, hey man, you're fine. Like this is normal. We know how to fix it. And immediately they start opening up, and we usually open that door by telling like a personal story or telling them like, hey, this is what I was dealing with, and like here's the 3-4 elements that like helped me out. And then that's when they start, oh man, like I'm dealing with that. And it starts that dialogue. It's that trust aspect. And I think that's,
you're able to create the connection because of the
immediately.
relatability.
And we can save a lot of time and a lot of BS just by being able to have that dialogue.
And I also know a lot of questions to ask that maybe a provider wouldn't know that's on the VA, because it's happened to me kind of deal, right? Do you ever experience X, Y, and Z kind of deal, right? What is, where have you been kind of deal, right? Like you'd be surprised at how many people have never asked me, like going through the VA, hey, where have you been? Like it's kind of a big deal. Like if you think about certain clinical symptoms and stuff, it's a big deal to ask that question kind of deal. Even in the VA, they don't ask us sometimes. Not saying all of them, I just my experience kind of deal. And so
would they even know if they asked you where you'd been? Could they even understand what you'd been through in those places?
It depends on the provider. My nurse practitioner at the VA, she was a nurse, she deployed, I think, to Iraq in a big base and never saw anything, which is fine. Right. But she would understand. You can see all the beautiful mountains in the background and stuff like that. Like I said, it's just one of those things that like really came down to is, and it's funny, and we'll talk about actually like solutions, because that's one thing I always hated when people talk about stuff like that. It's like they get you all genned up, all excited, like what are you doing? And we'll talk about that. But it's funny, I had my med board meeting not even 2 days ago with all my doctors and stuff. And they oversee like the staff, and they oversee like where we're sending guys and stuff to other providers, and some of them are providers themselves, kind of deal. And we just kind of share information, kind of like and just a lot of various things, right? And one of the big things that some of them got excited about, because they're not all soft operators. In fact, there's only 2 of them. They're actually soft operators, a Ranger and a SEAL. Or sorry, 2 SEALs and a Ranger.
Sorry for my ignorance here, but what is a soft operator mean?
Special Operations Forces. So Green Beret, Ranger, Marine Raider, PJ, CTT, like anyone in the SOCOM sphere, pretty much, who's been through a pipeline, and in which we're pretty much all roughly the same. Like everyone's seeing the same crap, pretty much. Just depends. The point is that we were talking about, and they got really excited because like, hey man, the DoD is doing a brains like depository now, where they're going to look at people who blasted their killed themselves, and they're going to look at their brains. I'm like, cool, that sounds great, guys. I want you all to stop for 1 fucking second and literally look at yourselves and say that that's okay. That it's okay after someone kills themselves. I think you were there when I said that. Literally, I was like, we just got excited about that. And I think that that's progress. Like, we're not going to stop veteran suicide. There's a lot of problems with veteran suicide. It's not just medical stuff, okay? But it's like, it's kind of hilarious to me that was your solution. So we'll just wait till they blow their heads off, or they'll take a bunch of drugs and OD. Then we'll look at their brains, or we can provide solutions right now, right? And so one of the couple of things that we like to do, we have 2 distinct realms of how we kind of triage. Well, 3 to technically have triage of how we do things. So we have a physical health thing. So this is all the pain guys are suffering through, which right now is a huge problem for us. It's actually why we spend the most money, is to actually try to eliminate pain through the use of regenerative medicine, like stem cells, exosomes, whatever you think. And then we're also the first people in the world to actually start infusing stem cells through an IV line to help TBI.
Can you talk about where that's done? Because
it's done through all private clinics across the United States. We work with some great clinicians who have taken the stand to actually do it. And I'm going to tell you that the results are unbelievable.
Amazing.
It's
because I heard there was like something where you couldn't do stem here in the States. So people were going places.
So there's different stem cells you can't do. So the big one that's legal, it's completely illegal, is embryonic stem cells, right? And I actually agree as well, right? I think that is absolutely ridiculous how they're harvested from fetuses and stuff like that. But there are, we've seen in the literature through other countries as well that like mesenchymal stem cells are doing just as well as embryonic kind of deal. They're just a different, or bone marrow kind of taken from your own bone marrow, or a umbilical cord transfer.
What would be some examples that stem cell would help? That some of the SEALs have had.
Cartilage wrote just general systematic inflation, rebuilding neurons in the brain, kind of deal. Just generally the inflammation problem, right? Just general inflammation, it just brings it down, right? And stem cells are just one regenerative product. We don't make, because I'm not a provider. None of my staff is my actual staff is providers. We're just ex-medics. We do not like tell someone kind of one treatment or other. We're very neutral to it. We're just like, hey, this is something that you could do based on what we're talking about. And we have constant dialogue with our.
You're just giving them options.
We're just giving them
Yeah, we give them
options. We're
options.
just giving them options, and then we, if it's something that they want to do, then we connect them and we pay for it, and it's all good. But like, it just depends on what the person's going through. We use it for physical pain, but that was, like I said, that's just one of the things, and that's the physical health side of the house. We also do like physical therapy and all the traditional stuff as well.
Which, kind of just high leveling it out of that in a sense of, we treat the physical because that's what influences the mental. And so, as we talk about regenerative medicine, that's treating the TBIs and more so the PTS, more than anything that we've seen thus far.
Yes.
Yeah,
I mean,
pretty spot on that.
Yeah, you're pretty much spot on. I mean, a lot of guys suffer from pain, and I think it's very much overlooked in our medical systems of like, well, the reason why that guy has terrible mental health is he can't walk right now anymore. It's like, well, why don't we help him? Now, I'm not going to be sitting here and like, oh, shun the unbeliever, like the point is like, talking about, like, the point is that like, sometimes it doesn't work. Like, I'll just be very honest with you. Sometimes it doesn't work, but it works more often than it does not. And it's a solution out there for guys. And that's just one solution. There's other things we can do like hormonal work. High T allows for faster growth, helps heal your brain. There's things like stellate ganglion blocks that will really.
What's that?
It's so you have these blocks in your neck, and the idea is that, like, really simply is that you turn them back on and off, and it kind of resets your system so you don't have anxiety, depression, and stuff like that, and you don't feel on edge.
It's nerve bundles.
Yeah,
Got it.
It's a little complicated kind of deal. I would, if anyone's going to read this, just type in stellate ganglion block, and there's a lot of great videos out there. It's actually really widely used in the civilian space for anxiety, depression, and I can go into a whole segment of them.
And the big thing about that is a lot of guys run in that fight or flight kind of aspect, and doing a stellate ganglion block helps bring it down to feel what normal feels like again.
Yeah.
When you say they run, like they're consistently
Just
at
consistent
the fight or
at
flight
that
because
high-
of their experience of being in
It's just,
teams.
I think it's the tempo. So kind of a quick tangent story of my own personal experience is when I was getting out of the teams, in the teams, you have stressors, right? And your responses to these stressors usually are the ones that you have built in. So for me, any kind of stress usually I was able to handle it with a physical element of what I can do. So when I got into the civilian world, in a sense, and as weird as it sounds, like the civilian world is more things done virtually, right? You're working through computers and video calls and all this stuff, that I was getting stressors, but what was happening, I was getting put into that fight or flight where I wanted to handle it with like a physical aspect of like, okay, time to problem solve, but I couldn't. So what I ended up doing is going into like an anxiety pool and having like massive amounts of anxiety. I didn't know what the hell was going on. And it was because like those stressors and my normal response to those stressors, I wasn't able to implement, and I had to find new ways to cope with like what these stressors were. And those anxiety pools would last like upwards of like 4 to 6 hours. So it would be like, it would completely take me out of whatever I was doing. And I just like couldn't really do anything, my Cindy, who is my, better half, she was with me at that time. And she remembers when it was like, dude, when that would hit, like you wouldn't be able to do anything for like half the day because you would just be so high in like that anxiety mindset that it's hard to come out of it. So
what would you do? Like before you had tools on how to cope with that?
Oh,
like what were you doing?
Just wait it out. You're kind of just waiting it out. Like, suffer through it because you don't really know what to do about it. And at the time, I think that's when I also was somewhat involved with SFF. Like those are the kind of things that like drove me to like reach out for help. Because like, man, I don't know what's going on. Like I feel like something's off, or I'm not operating well. And so, I kind of articulate that story because it is what a lot of guys deal with when they get out. They are just in this like hyper fight or flight mode where they're just like running at like a high RPM, and they don't really know how to come out of that. And it affects everything around them, right? It affects their family. If they're single, it affects their social group, or it affects their career that they're trying to get into. And that's a lot of things where like, hey man, more names just pop up in my head of guys that
I
reached
know.
out for it. And I'm like, I just remember where they were. And I'm like, hey, dude, like, let's get you some help. I connect them with you. We're able to get them that. And I remember immediately after when I talked to them, they're like, man, dude, I can actually think now. And they're like, this was such a needed reset because I didn't realize how fight or flight I was. And you could just tell in their voice, like their voice dropped. They're just a lot calmer. They're like, man, my wife thanks you guys. Like, it's awesome. So being able to see the immediate effects of that, because that's what it's used for, is to be able to hit that essential reset button and let you know what normal feels like again, so that you can be like, okay, yeah, maybe I was running a bit strong, and you don't know why, you don't know how.
Man, you're getting good at this.
Oh,
I love it, dude. Why am I here?
well, I need
You're
you to data. I need you to share all the
Data.
stats.
So, we talked about the physical health side of the house, right? And then we have a mental health side of the house, and it kind of breaks into two distinct things. We have obviously straight up mental health kind of deal, right? We deal with mental health kind of guys. We use things like delegating blocks. We also use endocrine stuff. We also use, traditional medicine kind of deal to really help. Mental health is a very hard, it's a very, very hard thing to deal with because sometimes it's not medically based. There are a lot of external factors from it, kind of deal. And so, like, point is that we do the mental health side of the house, and we're always there kind of deal. And it's very difficult to deal with, but we do have great success in that. A lot of physical, like PT was saying, and mental health kind of combine ultimately in the end. But we do have distinct pathways for that. Now, there's a third thing that we do that's very unique to our nonprofit. I've gotten a lot of flack over it. People kind of eyebrow raised it a little bit, but it had to be done. I won't get into the story why we do it, but I will say that we have a crisis line internal to the SFF that's occupied by my three staff members and my two staff members and myself, and it's open 24/7 for every SEAL to have conversations. We do not want to have guys kill themselves. In fact, it's a failure when somebody calls me. And I know that's a weird thing to say. When somebody calls me and they're like, I'm done, or I'm done with this crap, you're my last thing, I feel like I failed. Because I want to get guys before they get to that point. Though I'm happy that they've called, right? And so we man that. It's very difficult to do. We have taken the responsibility of doing that because the truth is you don't have to actually go anywhere outside the SFF system. Now, again, we like to use traditional resources, like we're a big believer. We tell everyone, hey, do you want to go to do you want us to call 911? Do you want us to bring you to the VA kind of deal? And every one of them's like, no. The point is like, you're right. You are calling me. And now I have to have the liability for that. And so we've really developed a real line with we're all trained and stuff like that, but we also do this a lot. And really it goes back to having real conversations of, why do you want to kill yourself, dude? And then walking through that. I can't even tell you how many people we save. And I'm not going to say it, but it's a lot. It's in hundreds. Okay. Hundreds and hundreds. Okay. And it gets worse in the rainy season kind of deal. We have a lot of, extortion just happened kind of deal. And it just gets weird, but we are here and we mean it. I know when PT says, I got your back kind of deal. Well, we do have your back. Right. And the beautiful thing about it is that guys will be like, as we tell new guys coming out of the teams that we have this capability, we're here for you. A lot of them are like, that's not going to be me. Okay, dude, but it could be. And sometimes it is. You just don't know. Kind of deal. We have the ability to maneuver. We've gotten guys treatment within 30 minutes of talking to guys. I've flown guys across the country within hours and get them to private stuff. I mean, we do not play around. We get them whatever you need, if it's internal or it's use the VA or whatever. But we do that, and we're really proud of the work we do in that space. But for stats, right? I like to use stats as PT knows. I do like nerdy stats kind of deal. So to date, we've helped 2,000 team guys through medical treatments, over 7,000 treatments to date. And for non-financial assistance, that means like helping with the VA stuff and getting blood tests and all the traditional maintenance that people just don't know. I think it's up 3,000 now kind of deal. So and
we didn't start tracking that until
until probably like 2 years ago.
Wait, walk me through those stats again. So you guys have helped 7,000.
Treatment wise.
5,000.
Treatment wise,
Treatment wise, we've done 7,000. Altogether, we've helped about 5,000 guys all across the spectrum of everything from either getting them external treatments for the stuff that we were just talking about or more. We do have 52 unique modalities internally, outside the SFF kind of deal, or we help guys just help get their benefits and stuff like that. Like, but again, or just medical advice in terms of not medical advice, but like, hey man, this I would go see an oncologist kind of deal, right? And this is how you would do it in the VA kind of deal, right? Or, hey, go to see this private provider that we know that's going to give you a checkup. Or, hey, you want a second opinion? Let me get one of my docs to give you a second opinion on your imaging kind of deal, right? So again, we're not a medical system, but we do a hell of a lot of work in here. And there's more to come. We got plans upon plans upon plans, but really in the end, it's like people are like, that's amazing. That's how we all wish medicine was. And that's the truth is we just wanted a place where everyone feels secure to have these conversations and then give them to clinicians who actually know and care about them. And we're going to continue to do that. We're going to continue to crush that. It's our biggest need for sure in funding, just because you can only ask for freebies so long kind of deal. But it's a really unique program. It's really incredible. I will end on this is that, PT and I talk about this all the time. Unfortunately, we can only help our brothers financially because, just resources are limited, right? They're limited. And like, I'm biased. I like team guys a lot, clearly, being Navy SEALs, kind of deal. And so, I wanted to make a stand for the guys out there who don't have us. Of course, if I answered my phone, like someone just called me just now, it's a random number. Who knows what it could be, kind of deal, right? But we wanted to create the Operator Health Index because there's actually no place out there that's like a contemplation. Is that the word I'm looking for? The Operator Health. A compilation. Thank you. A compilation of like actual medical treatments, what's out there. Like if you go to like Mayo Clinic or like the VA or anything, there's no actual list of everything, even from Eastern to alternative to traditional. And we wanted to create a place where it was really easy access for guys to be like, wow, you can do that for a TBI. Now I can't pay for it or whatever, but I could write a huge article about it. And so it's funny. We always talk about Navy SEALs writing books. Kind of deal. And I'm a huge believer in not writing books. I really don't like it. But if you pulled the 96 articles that I wrote for medical treatments, all approved by my health board, my medical board, it's a book. It is. It's a book. It's all about medicine kind of deal.
Yeah, and we put that on our website. So it's called the Operator Health Index. You just go to the About section and you'll find it right there. But as Joey has mentioned, it's a compilation of all the things that the treatments that are out there and what they treat for. So you can search it in a couple different ways, but you're able to see very quickly of what it is, why it matters behind it, and then you can dive deeper and see actually the full breakdown of all the things that we know about it and that we have researched and that all our medical board has approved that is actually legitimacy behind it, to kind of remove any kind of stigma or narrative that might be around a certain modality and really understand like what is it used for and what's the efficacy and how can we maximize it. So we've seen tremendous feedback once. I think, how long has it been up?
I think we published March.
Yeah, it's been this year.
It's been this year for sure. And it's like, I've had so many people come to me be like, hey man, I just want to thank you. I didn't know 90% of this stuff was real. I thought I was done. Like nothing could help me. And I'm like, you're welcome.
And there's other,
and it's like, I have no idea who that is, like kind of deal. Right. And that was the point. That was our way of using our ability to fundraise and to do these great stuff, but also tell the other people out there that it's okay. And the beauty part of it is like, people always ask, was this just for military? It's like, I don't know. Have you ever played football? Have you ever gotten in a car accident? Like, do you have depression? Do you have anxiety? Like, these are things that can help you too.
Yeah.
Maybe not to the extent that that we're allowing it, but like this is something that like you can use if your things right.
Everyone can use it for sure.
Yeah.
What would you say, Joey and PT? Curious to get your opinion on this too. Is like low hanging fruit. If someone's like dealing with depression or anxiety, what's like, hey, if you just start implementing this, like you're probably gonna see positive changes.
I have a certain approach that. It really is understanding like what's your lifestyle, and if you're staying up late and you're drinking, okay, let's stop doing that. Stop drinking, get some sleep. Like very basic, like low hanging fruit, right? Like what's your lifestyle right now?
Yeah.
If you are operating or have that figured out or have a struggle with that, like if there's addiction or if there's other underlying problems, like that's where the individualized aspect comes in, where we really try to understand. Okay, let's see the whole picture first before we kind of like tell you which way to go, because there might be an easy fix. There might be a lot more complication behind it. So
Yeah.
That seems like a low hanging fruit of like, hey, if you're drinking and you're staying up all
if you're
night,
partying all
you're
night,
probably
But the
gonna
funny
have
thing is,
repercussions.
we laugh at that. But sometimes it takes PT or myself or anyone to be like, stop fucking partying kind of deal. Like, that is why you're feel like shit. And I know it sounds really weird, but it's like, you're not 20 years old in the teams anymore. You're your X age, so it's interesting. Yeah, we both agreed that.
Do you feel like, Joey, you can have more of those direct conversations because of who you guys are? As in, like, being SEALs, you can kind of go.
oh yeah, I don't expect a lot of, nor will it be received well. Like if it doesn't come from a brother, as you can say, to be like, hey man, get your shit together. Like I can say that to someone and it be heartfelt in a way, because obviously, but if there's, and I think that's the unique part of us is we can, I can call Joey out on his bullshit and be like, hey dude, you're lying. Or like, just kind of really cut to the chase. But, that's where I think it's tough for, because this is all behind the curtain type stuff, right? Like everything we're talking about is very much like the ailments and the symptoms and everything that our guys deal with. That's kind of under the skirt, right?
Of course, it's kind of going back to your statement of like why people omit things to VA.
Yeah, because there is a legacy that we all know that we are upholding for the SEAL community.
Yes,
and that has been embedded in us since the moment you join the community. Our ethos describe it really well. That we want to be the feared. We want to be, our enemies need to fear us. So that means there's nothing wrong with us. We are the strongest. We will outwit you. Like that all is true, but there is a cost to it. And that's the stuff that we treat in a sense. So, I don't want for 1 second, like this conversation to be like, oh, team guys are, weak or whatever. It's like, no they're not. It's, it really is like, this is the stuff that takes, what the toll is for running at that capacity.
I will say this, and it's always funny. We always talk about that fine line of like, is every SEAL like totally messed up? Like, I thought they're like the greatest performers ever. The truth is, they are. They will crush everything. You will never know. But that's why we have us, so they can be like, hey, I crushed today and made all my reports, whatever the job is, kind of deal. Like, but like I'm fucking struggling, kind of deal, right? Like, and I need help, right? And it's like, okay, like I understand. And I think that's really, really important because the truth is that, again, it goes back to our ethos. It goes back to who we are, right? Like, even in the team, even think about missions. Like, nobody's going to sit there and be like, oh, my leg hurts from a mission. It's like, no, we're good.
Yeah.
Kind of deal, right? Like, as a medic, like, yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. It's like, cool, we're going to get you ready to go. And that's how it goes back to the burnout thing. And that's just that constant drive. So, like, people don't even know. Like, you'll be a SEAL, they'll be really nice, or hopefully they'll be really nice kind of deal. And they'll just be like, a normal, probably a cool guy and stuff. You're like, man, I just heard Joey TT speak. That guy's totally fine. Maybe he went through our programs, kind of deal, right? Or it's like he's just doing what we do.
And there's and I'll go to the storytelling side of things, but there's different ways, genres of story you can say, like story narratives. So there's like the Superman, right? The Superman is the extraordinary being essentially trying to do ordinary things. Trying to be ordinary. And then the flip side of it is the ordinary doing extraordinary things. And that's where I would place our community is very ordinary type of like humans. There's nothing biologically different about us, but there's a choice that each of us have made to do extraordinary things at whatever cost. And that's kind of the storyline that a lot of our guys follow.
Dude, that's so good.
God damn, that's fucking good, dude.
That's so good.
Like, just do that.
Done.
Dude, he's getting so good at this shit.
That was amazing. That's amazing. So it's a conscious decision, basically.
It's a choice. And I think that's a choice of service. So when you think about putting others in front of yourself, or what I like to say is like, it's not the fact that I know my buddy has my back. It's the fact I know I have his. It's a choice to be of service to others and at whatever cost. And when you have that takes all your internal pain away. It's a funny thing that you can flip. So when you feel like you are at your lowest or anything, and you just simply think about like, okay, Joey's struggling. How do I take care of him? Right then you forget all the problems that you were dealing with because you're focused on someone else and helping them. And that's the mindset that you have in that team environment. And that's why I always say also, like, when you're in that active duty environment with our SEAL teams, the fact that you're with each other 90 something % of the time, you're able to do extraordinary things because of that group. You can sleep 4 hours a night for 3 months in a row and be completely fine because you're in that team environment. That ecosystem supports that. The moment you step out of that and try to do the same thing, it's complete burnout. Your T goes, tanks, and you're on your face. But it's something really interesting about that, like that team environment, that kind of culture environment that allows you to thrive when you're all are singing on the same frequency.
So good, dude.
That is really good.
So good. But yeah, that's all I have on our programs, really.
Yeah. I'd be so curious to know, like, what drew you guys to the SEALs? Because I have something I've thought about quite a bit, like this nature versus nurture. It's this concept of, like, Joey, were you the type of guy that, like, your knee hurts and you're like, I'm just going to keep going, like, from the early days? Or, like, did you kind of learn that mentality being a part of the SEAL? So were you a Navy SEAL prior to being a Navy SEAL, or did you become a Navy SEAL while you were, like, going through boats?
That's a great question. So I actually, I was a wrestler. I went to the University of Oklahoma on scholarship. Did really well there. And it was
He's being humble right now, by the way.
Yeah.
Did very well there. The point is that you talk about that specific question. So my dad always used to tell this story, and I don't quite remember it. But when I first started wrestling, I started kind of late. I started in like 7th grade, 7th grade. I can't remember. I went to this private club, and I used to just get my face smashed in. I mean, smashed in every day by these people who've been wrestling for literally my entire lives. And my dad said I used to run to the front of the line because, like, how it used to work, you would go and stay in the mat. It's this thing. All the wrestlers here that know what I'm talking about. But yeah, I would run to the front line just to get my face smashed in again. Now, some people would call that and be like, brain cells low. Got it. Kind of deal. But ultimately, I was always like that and through high school and stuff like that. So I truly believe that, that's why, that's how I was succeeded. But as far as the SEAL thing goes, none of my family ever served in the military. I went up to college and I actually, there's a program called Seaman to Admiral where one of the SEALs who was becoming an officer and his hometown was Oklahoma. He used to watch me wrestle, and he was just one day was like, I think we're talking about Captain Phillips or whatever, that story. And I was like, man, SEALs are so cool. I have no idea what the hell I'm talking about. Kind of just like super cool. And he's like, yeah, they're okay. I was like, what are you talking about? So we started talking. I didn't even know, right? I had like 3 classes with this guy kind of deal. And he was like, yeah, I'm a Navy SEAL. And so when I left Oklahoma kind of deal, I was like, well, I'm just going to be a Navy SEAL. That was literally my thing. And I went to training, which is funny because a lot of guys do train for like their whole lives to be a SEAL. And I was just kind of like, let's do this.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the best things that happen in life are just kind of a mentality of screw it. I guess I'm going to go try this. And it like kind of works out. Yeah,
exactly that. And just kind of to note on that, like I'll just say this in kind of generality. I'm like twice your size. I would not wrestle Joey.
Are you sure? I don't think you're twice my size.
Well, not now. you definitely put on some
I
muscle.
totally understand that. I did Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for a few months, and I think prior to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I was like, okay, like I have a little bit of an athletic background. I work out. I could probably you look at someone, you're like, I could probably do pretty well. And then you go into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and you realize pretty quickly like how it's technique and it's leverage and it's that first day, which I think everyone should do to a certain degree because it's so unbelievably humbling, where you're like, oh, I don't think as highly about myself as I once did after that experience.
Yeah.
PT, you got some heritage, dude.
So for me, and I'll kind of start, kind of tapping on what Joey was saying too for his story. But as far as like, was I a Navy SEAL before I was a Navy SEAL kind of thing? I would say I definitely had this mindset of similar to Joey of like that go-getter mindset. And I'll describe it in this way. And like, if you're going to ask my mom, kind of thing, she's like, anything I get involved with, I need it as much as it needs me. And the best way to describe that, like I played football for 11 years and the discipline of football I needed so much. And I did really well in that. Like I was an All-American out of Florida, that the sport needed me as much as I needed it. Oh. And so leaving that sport, I was struggling trying to find like, okay, coming from where I come from in Florida, it's either a lot of people I grew up with, went down that road of jail or died, or because there's a lot of affiliations that I was a part of. And I was like, I know if I don't have something, it's going to go probably bad. So my grandfather is actually UDT, so underwater demolition teams. They're the grandfathers of the SEALs. So in 1962, the designation went from UDT to SEALs, sea, air, and land. And he trained in Fort Pierce, Florida. He was part of UDT 18, and he helped build the UDT SEAL Museum that's down there. So I grew up in that. I grew up in Fort Pierce, Port St. Lucie, Fort Pierce, St. Lucie County, all that area. And I would go to the museum when I was little and visit him. And I remember distinctly running through there one time. He was like, "Hey, come here," and pulled me in the back closet, like where they store all the stuff. And he was like, "Hey, hold this." And he puts a grenade in my hand.
Whoa.
And I'm like, "This is pretty heavy. I didn't know there were these heavy,
They are pretty heavy.
they are pretty heavy." Yeah, we have throwing competitions. So who can get it in the tire? But yeah, so that was like,
Was that like an actual real grenade?
the one he put in my hand? Yeah, because he was showing me what they actually feel and
Wow.
look like. Obviously, like he was watching me while I was holding it.
Of course,
Obviously,
but
there's still a pin in it.
Yeah.
I was like, take the pin out.
Yeah. What does this do? So, I remember the type of man he was, and he was very much the guy when you were working on something, there would just be an extra pair of hands that show up. And that was like his way of just always like helping others. And so fast forward, when football wasn't working out, I was really trying to explore what I was going to get into next. I remember that, and went to the recruiter. I was like, "Hey, I want to be a Navy SEAL." And at the time I was playing fullback in college, and I was 255 with my neck. I had no neck. And recruiter looked at me and he was like, you're too big to be a Navy SEAL. You'll sink. And, and that was my first indicator to be like, okay, this is why I should do it. Like anytime someone tells me no,
Nice.
I immediately am like, that's what I should be doing then.
Is that how most SEALs are? That same type of like
I think
mentality of
there's
tell me I can't and I'll show you I will?
There's a bit of a renegade and pirate mentality that SEALs have, where and that's, it's the best of us and the worst of us at the same time. Because there is that, hey, we'll figure it out. We'll make it happen. Because we can think outside the box. And the discipline of the military and the SEAL teams allow us to keep it a steady line, as opposed to what I had mentioned, where the environment where I grew up in, like a lot of stealing, a lot of violence, a lot of stuff like that. I think that's why I was able to thrive in the SEAL teams, because you always had that out of the box mind thinking of like, okay, well the rules are this, but this is how we can get it done. And that's what I loved about the SEAL teams.
Yeah, super cool. So good.
So good.
One of the questions I wanted to get to is like what the training was like actually, like your guys' buds days, because
You
you
seriously
like
just look at me and point to me like I'm gonna cancel. Oh my god.
because you hear
Well,
about
I have the story I mentioned earlier when we were running.
Dude,
hear
I blacked
about-
out. We ran.
like
we
walk
went-
us through how it all
Yeah.
kind of goes down.
Here's some inspiration. So I tell Joey, like, hey, come up to LA. He's out of San Diego. I was like, we'll do a little hike once we get here. And we went for a hike with Sten. Well,
He took you to Will Rogers?
yeah, that's not a hike. It's a hill
fucking
sprint.
hill.
Yeah, and
it's like
he's running. He runs
we
it.
run the whole time.
Well, the funny thing about that is, he ran track in college.
Oh yeah.
So
And again, Joey and I, like, yeah, we did really well in the teams, but like we're not track athletes. So
No.
keeping up with him, it's fun because that's his like one up sometimes, where he can be like, okay, I'll run these guys.
And he can win every time. I don't care.
Go for it, man. But anyways, we were kind of talking. So I'll share one story about training. So a buddy of mine, so we have this thing called Hell Week. I don't know if you've heard about it, but it's a week long. You're up for a week and you're continuously moving. You're eating on the go, and it's basically a complete punishment from the moment it starts to the moment it ends. And so my class was about to go through Hell Week, and a buddy of mine was in the class ahead. He had been through it already. And I asked him, I was like, hey man, like, any advice? Like, what do you recommend I do, like, as I go into Hell Week? And he was like, he thought about it for a second. He's like, okay, when you're under the boat, we run with boats on our heads, right? And he's like, the guy in front of you. And, when he's running and he puts his foot there and lifts it up and puts his foot there and lifts it up, that footprint, put your foot there. And then the next one, put your foot there. He was like, it's going to get to that and do that. And I'm like, that's your advice, huh? Because I didn't know, right? And then the moment came where, dude, it was that you had to just focus on putting one foot in front of the other. You can't think about the big picture. You just have to focus on what's right in front of you. And that's the only way. I feel like there never became a quitting moment. There was like, is my body going to make this? And it was like, okay, well, I can lift this leg. I can put it there. I can lift this leg and put it there. And that's one thing I actually, use as a description to showcase what SEAL Future Foundation is for the SEALs, is it's that guy in front of you who's already stepped there. And you just have to follow what we've already done. And, you won't step on a landmine because we figured it out.
It's good stuff.
Dude, full circle.
What about for you? What was the hard parts of training for you?
None. Super easy. I took Buds.
If anyone talked crap, you just say, I'll wrestle you right now?
No, I took Buds online, actually.
He did wrestle an instructor, I believe.
No way. Did you really?
Yeah, I'm not going to put on.
You don't want to win that because even if you win, you lose.
Yeah, that's true.
There's 2 instructors, actually. I'm not going to say his name because he'll literally text me. I'm coming out to California, dude.
Is there a thing called sugar cookies?
Oh yeah.
That is a thing, right?
Oh yeah. You know what it is?
I mean, I've read that it's basically rolling in the sand all wet.
Well,
so
you got to
miserable.
get wet first in order for the sand to stick.
It's so funny. People are like, that's fun, dude. Like, people don't understand how terrible it is when you do it all day and sand gets everywhere and it just rips up your skin. Like, that's the stuff that you don't see on like Buds Class 2, is it 2, 3, 4 kind of deal, and all these like documentaries about Buds. It's like you get sandy and wet, it sucks and it's uncomfortable, but really it's like it gets down everywhere and it just rips your skin up all day long for 6 straight months. And it's just like, oh my God.
Brutal. Joey, like, I'm imagining myself in your shoes going through training, and I feel like I would have to like make an agreement with myself where it was like, I'm either going to make it through this thing or I'm going to die trying. Is that like the type of mentality you have to have in order to get through?
I don't know if it personally for me, I don't know if it was like, I never thought I was going to die in training. I know people have that mentality. I think it goes back to like kind of what PT said, just in general for us. It's like, there's a mission. The mission is to get through training. And that's what every SEAL has in commonality, is that we can go and see a hard thing and we can just get it done kind of deal. And it's the same thing through anything that we do in the teams or on the outside. And with Buds, it was the same way. Every day I was like, okay, what's the next evolution, right? The next training event, which is pretty much right after the other thing, right? Mm-hmm. And you just start kind of getting in a rhythm where it's like, okay, this, and this. And then you kind of like, okay, well, I'm going to go really hard on this part. I'm going to just kind of go halfway on this part because this is my best event kind of deal. And it teaches you almost like kind of like time management and kind of like, physical management.
Energy management. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, Buds is super tough. Obviously a lot of people don't make it, but really anyone who walks out of that training pipeline, it doesn't matter who you are. Doesn't matter, what you believe, your skin color, whatever, dude, right? We're all the same man. Like, there's no place in the world that I'm aware of that has that same outcome, that everyone walking out of there has the exact same traits in a good way. And it's the true determination of like, where the guys walking into the SEAL teams kind of deal. And so I've always, that's why Buds is sacred.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Let's end on that. That was amazing. That was so good.
Done.
Joey, PT, thanks so much for being on the podcast. Really appreciate both. And thank you so much for your service too.
Absolutely.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Appreciate you. Cool.